Hello, friends. I'm interrupting our scheduled broadcast because my heart is troubled, probably more so than I can remember in recent history. I told the staff here at Breakthrough to cancel everything we're doing because I need to share something of overwhelming importance with you, my precious partner, that will stir your spirit, I believe, to righteous indignation and holy anger. You know, there are defining moments in all of our lives, in your life and in mine. Not too long ago, I was watching television just as you are right now, sitting in the comfort of my home with my family around me. I turned on the evening news, and as I watched, I was paralyzed in my chair. As the reporter began to describe what could have been the plot line in a Hollywood horror film, what I saw, what I heard, sent chills up and down my very spine and revealed an entire sector of our society that is being systematically targeted for extinction. Now, I have to warn you, what you're about to see will never, ever escape your memory.
Overnight, 69-year-old Kermit Gosnell went from being called doctor to being called a murderer. 300-page grand jury report accuses Gosnell of not running a clinic, but a prescription drug mill by day and an abortion mill by night.
In case after case, Dr. Gosnell and his assistants induced labor, forced the live birth of viable babies in the 6th, 7th, and 8th month of pregnancy, and then killed those babies by cutting into the back of their necks with scissors and severing their spinal cords.
Gosnell was arrested along with his wife and 8 others following an 11-month grand jury probe that uncovered hundreds of late-term abortions by Gosnell and his staff. Behind me is the doctor's now closed office, which was called a house of horrors today.
Bags and bottles holding aborted fetuses were scattered throughout the building. A row of jars containing severed feet lined a shelf. Untrained, unsupervised workers injected dangerous drugs into women undergoing illegal late-term abortions.
Gosnell made millions of dollars performing hundreds of illegal late-term abortions, but because he destroyed records, prosecutors cannot go after him on that. We are told that if you had cash, he would perform the abortion according to the grand jury report. If you were too young, it didn't matter. If you needed service right away, he offered same-day service, including Sundays. He also had a price list for abortions. According to investigators, he made $10,000 to $15,000 a night doing late-term abortions. They collected $240,000 in cash when they raided his home last year.
I know that you can't help but be as shocked as I was after witnessing such an unimaginable house of horrors. Not in some far-off third world country. The harsh reality is that these unspeakably cruel, these inhuman acts of outright murder are taking place, and they're taking place all across America. Those precious, precious little feet displayed like trophies. They weren't just blobs of tissue being surgically removed because of an inconvenience or discomfort. They were all that was left of innocent, unborn children who will never know the comfort of loving arms. They'll never ever see the beautiful world of a loving God prepared just for them. They'll never fulfill His wonderful plan for their lives. It wasn't just a tiny life that was lost. It was the loss of an entire lifetime. A lifetime of birthday celebrations, a lifetime of first days of school, proms and wedding days. No one will celebrate their successes. No one will even know their names. It's as if they never existed at all, discarded like so much refuse. Their one, their only experience as they took their first breath, the paralyzing pain of rusty scissors severing their spinal cords. I refuse. I refuse to be silent in the face of such unspeakable horror. I am determined to do everything I can possibly do to expose this atrocity, this evil monster of the abortion industry with its minions like Dr. Gosnell. I don't know if I can even feel comfortable calling him a doctor. His house of horrors was filled with bags and jars of the bodies of aborted babies scattered everywhere. The so-called operating rooms reeked of cat urine with litter boxes and animals lurking around during abortion procedures. Think about that. Vulnerable women, frightened women, hurting women with little or no resources and even less information, making the most regrettable decision of their lives. Gosnell not only showed complete disregard for the unborn babies, but also extended absolutely no sense of decency, no aspect of respect toward his patients. As you just heard on the report, Gosnell and his associates kept aborted babies in their refrigerator next to their lunch. Most human beings couldn't even bring themselves to touch something that's been stored with a cold corpse, let alone eat it. Now, perhaps the most shocking part of this ghoulish scenario is hidden in the details. Dr. Gosnell's practice and thousands of similar abortuaries across the nation aren't located, as you probably well know, in upscale suburbs. There's been a concerted effort by Planned Parenthood to specifically target the black community. It's a diabolical plan that's taking the lives of 1,500 precious African American unborn babies every single day in the United States of America. Let me try to put that in some sort of perspective for you. Consider, if you will, the estimated death toll of the top 5 leading causes of death among African Americans since Roe versus Wade in 1973. Those 5 are these: AIDS, 200,000. Violent crimes, 300,000. Accidents, 370,000. Cancer, 1.6 million. Heart disease, you hear a lot about that on advertisements on your television. Heart disease among African Americans since 1973, 2.3 million deaths. That's a combined death toll of just under 5 million people in those top 5 areas. Now compare that number to the nearly 15 million innocent African American babies who've been murdered since Roe versus Wade in 1973. That's what I said. 15 million precious African American babies. That's triple the number of all other leading causes of death among blacks combined. It's a deeply, deeply troubling indictment on our society that here in America, the land of the free, here in America, the home of the brave, here in America, the greatest threat to the black community is, hear me, the mass murder, the systematic, organized, often paid for by your tax dollars, murder of unborn African American children. Regardless of race, regardless of gender, or any other factors, life matters more than anything else. And you don't want to miss not 1 second of today's broadcast to Breakthrough, because when I return, I'm going to reveal how these horrifying statistics reflect the black genocide that's taking place in America. You want me to tell you about it, and I'll be right back, brave enough and bold enough to tell the truth.
Margaret Sanger dedicated her life to eliminating people she felt were inferior. She founded the American Birth Control League and published Birth Control Review, which became vehicles for racial supremacists who desired selective breeding of superior humans. In 1939, Sanger's organization became the Birth Control League of America and quietly unveiled her Negro Project. selling eugenics as a way for blacks to defeat poverty and advance in America. After facing stiff opposition to her plan, she renamed her organization Planned Parenthood. Today, abortion affects women of every race, but is disproportionately targeted at African American women. An overwhelming majority of Planned Parenthood clinics are strategically placed in minority neighborhoods. As a result, 30% of the African American population has been tragically terminated since the legalization of abortion in 1973.
Since the beginning of this broadcast, while you were sitting there, the lives of 20 precious African American babies were brutally ended before they ever had a chance to begin. That clock right there on your screen is there to illustrate the genocide that is taking place as you watch this broadcast of innocent, unborn African Americans. The foundation of Planned Parenthood, masterminded by Margaret Sanger, was nothing short of a brutal form of population control of the African American community. Now, I don't know who else is brave enough to say that, but I'm going to say it. What's frighteningly revealing is the direct connection of Margaret Sanger's diabolical plan to the eugenics practices occurring simultaneously just across the Atlantic, the Jewish Holocaust. Allow me to share just a few of her choicest words, and I'm quoting Margaret Sanger now. Birth control must lead ultimately to a cleaner race, and eugenics is the most adequate and thorough avenue to the solution of racial, political, and social problems. You can't make up that kind of twisted thinking. Now, timing isn't the only common ground between the racist roots of Planned Parenthood and the Holocaust. Here we can see the direct similarities between these two historic tragedies. First, let's look at what I call the rebranding of the victims. In Nazi Germany, cartoons routinely depicted Jews as pigs, as dogs, as rats, as other vermin. Such propaganda made it so much easier to implement the radical plans of the Nazi Party. Today, Planned Parenthood and other pro-choice advocates use equally dehumanizing terminology to further their agenda. They use terminology like embryo or fetus or blob of tissue or product of conception to describe an unborn human being. You see the desensitization that's going on? They have to dehumanize even in the terminology to make the human mind be able to grasp and get its arms around destroying innocent human life. It's no wonder that our culture has degraded the value we place on the sanctity of human life. Of course, once these victims have been successfully rebranded, they no longer need to be considered a person. Adolf Hitler declared, quote, that the Jews are undoubtedly a race, but not human. In 1936, the highest court in Germany announced that they refused to recognize Jews as persons in the legal sense. Does that sound familiar? Dehumanizing, not persons, without personhood. The 14th Amendment to our Constitution does not include the unborn in its definition of a person. But stripping the personhood from innocent unborn babies in the womb is a primary strategy of the pro-choice movement. Listen, no matter how you try to twist it, that rebranded tissue is wholly and completely a human life, destined by God to live on this earth. At the moment of conception, when 23 chromosomes from the mother and 23 chromosomes from the father meet, a baby already has every detail of its development, every single inherited characteristic. The baby's eye color, the baby's hair color, its height, skin tone, personality traits, they're all created at the moment of conception. The Bible confirms it in Jeremiah 1:5. It shouts, "Before I formed you in your mother's womb, I knew you." Science proves it. And Planned Parenthood refuses to admit it. I asked my staff to bring me the fetal models that we use at our life-saving women's clinic. We show these models to women who've just learned they're pregnant so they fully understand that a life, a precious, fully formed baby with a beating heart is growing in their womb. Here's the reality behind the statistics. This is what a baby looks like at 8 weeks. Here at 10 weeks. This is the time generally when a mother finds out that she's pregnant. Do you see the feet, the legs, the hands, the fingers, the eyes, the ears, the nose, the mouth? 8 weeks. 10 weeks. Remember, as that clock runs on your screen, innocent African American babies are being aborted. 12 weeks. Just 20 weeks. Fetus? I don't think so. Blob of tissue? I don't think so. 26 weeks. 30 weeks. Every time I see these models, I think of my own children, Ashton and Austin. I think how much they've grown. I can remember the day they came into this world, the day they took their first steps. I remember how hard it was to see them graduate from high school, go on to college. And then I hear of someone like Dr. Gosnell brutally murdering unborn babies when they're able to live outside the womb and extinguishing the precious life that God so lovingly created in its mother's womb. This great worldwide ministry fought tirelessly for a ban on partial birth abortion, and I'm deeply troubled that this atrocity is still taking place every single day. How our Heavenly Father must grieve to see such callous disregard of this most precious of all creation. And I need you to know, I'm outraged. I'm outraged to know that African Americans are being systematically targeted and deceived into aborting themselves into extinction. Today, millions of black women are persuaded to terminate their pregnancies simply because they don't have adequate resources. I even hear preachers say that. Planned Parenthood continues to sell the lie that supporting and raising a child should never ever be a burden. Really? That's all children are. A burden? Tell that to the husband and wife who are unable to have a baby. Tell that to a mother who weeps every night to cradle in her arms the flushed cheek of an infant child. Tell that to the millions waiting in line to adopt. And I assure you, no matter what the circumstances are, there are countless families ready to embrace that tiny, beautiful life with open and loving arms. And yet young pregnant women, frightened, are only given one option by most abortuary doctors: terminate the pregnancy. Let me give you another term: kill the baby. They certainly are not informed of the pain the guilt, or the anguish they'll likely experience in the aftermath of their deadly decision.
I only had one abortion. I was 16 years old. It was a really dark time in my life. I can remember feeling just great anxiety about the situation.
I was about 17 years old, and what drove me to the first abortion is just a history of abuse.
I remember initially being excited about it. I'm gonna parent my baby. I named her even.
I went and I ended up talking to my doctor, and the first thing that my doctor told me was that you're carrying a blob of tissue.
I remember I went to a Planned Parenthood here in Columbus, and I sat across a desk from somebody, and I remember the office was awful and dingy and dirty and dark, and the woman in a very businesslike tone said, "Yes, you're pregnant, and what do you intend to do? Are you gonna keep your baby, or are you gonna terminate the pregnancy?" And I, after a little hesitation, said, "I'm gonna terminate the pregnancy."
So I laid on the table, and all I remember hearing was the ripping of my first baby coming out of me. And that started a road of me having a second abortion.
I, was listening intently as if I could hear, my baby being sucked away.
I started to cry, and I literally, when the nurse took me out of the room, I went to the bathroom and just started to get sick and vomit everywhere.
Afterwards, I was numb at best. I cried for a while.
After going through all that, I continued for years, about 14 years of having tormenting nightmares and dreams, and just the constant sound of having this machine that was in me that they said would just suck, you wouldn't feel. And I knew I felt every rip, every tear. I heard the sound over and over again. The main reason behind all the torment and the abuse, and it was because I knew I had took these two lives.
No scars. That's what they want you to believe. No one's affected. It's just a blob of tissue. You won't feel a thing. That's the lie being perpetrated on 1,500 African American women across this nation every single day. Millions of post-abortive women in America are among the walking wounded, reliving and grieving their decision every day. That's why I so appreciate the opportunity to share the crucial program that I have with you today. It's heartbreaking to realize that during the time you and I have shared together on today's broadcast, more than 30 African American babies have been aborted, murdered, because of the twisted lies of Planned Parenthood and the abortion industry. It's past time to stand up and shout the truth about this evil in our nation to everyone we know.